I'm talking with the Chief Minister at a Friday briefing. Well, it looked like you saved the day. Your PR people spun it, didn't it? That you went rushing to London and everyone listened to you and they got the law, potential law changed and removed the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands from the beneficial owners situation. I'm being slightly glib here, but did you have much impact, or was it never going to happen? You know,
no, we genuinely had a lot of impact. We're working with our Crown Dependency colleagues. We found out on the Thursday that, well, we knew it was coming, and it had happened before, but you just hadn't found out about it. The Criminal Justice Bill, last year there was a problem in the House of Lords, but we just quietly went down to the House of Lords, met with the person who was moving the amendments, explained the situation, and they kindly agreed not to move the amendments. So that was it part, but this one was very public. We found out Thursday evening. Friday, Saturday, I was in conference calls with the Justice Department, who are responsible for the Isle of Man, David Gork, the Lord High Chancellor and Lord Keane, and then with my Crown Dependency colleagues on a plane on Sunday, full day of meetings on Monday, meeting with all sorts of MPs, whether they were the rebel ones or Labour or SNP or DUP, Conservative, burnt the midnight oil, and then back Tuesday morning to answer questions in Keys. So
let's just do a tabletop exercise like everyone's doing these days. Supposing, and you know, this is a lot of what's ifs.
Yeah.
If it had gone ahead without the amendments.
Yeah. Or with the amendments.
Well, you know, if the Isle of Man
New Clause 14 was the one that affected the island.
Okay, let's do it with everything was in there.
Yeah.
It went as far as being voted, and it even went through.
Yeah.
What ramifications? Well, we know the ramifications have been. What could you have done to stop it? I mean, that's, I suppose, ultimately the Radio Caroline thing is the only thing that people seem to judge us by when it was done
in 67 or 69 or whatever.
The Order of Council was just, you know, it just happened against the will of the Isle of Man.
Yeah, well, I would have fought it, because the argument is that the Isle of Man is not doing anything that isn't illegal. We are complying with the full international law on beneficial ownership. It's the UK have gone one further with a public register. The international standard is a private register, and not only that, our private register is far more factual and up to date than the UK's public register, because ours is monitored by the Financial Services Authority and has to be regularly updated.
I think the question though was, what could be done about it? You say you're going to fight, or could have fought it.
Well,
could you actually, in court?
Yeah,
or it would have been a court issue?
We would have fought it for the simple reason that I do not believe that the UK have the powers to legislate for the Isle of Man if the Isle of Man has complied with international standards.
Clearly, the ramifications, to now the right place that word, it would be massive, right? Because you would have lost confidence, the business community would know where they're
that's just
protected, right?
I've written to all MPs in Westminster, but the government agreed with us. They didn't support this new clause. They asked for it to be dropped, and that's what happened. So it's explaining the constitutional element, but equally you have to look at this. It's not just about that. There was games afoot. There was the May elections 2 days after this. It was trying to... It was heavily political at the same time. This hasn't gone away, I hasten to. Just because we've won this one.
And that's what has come to. I mean, this is going to be sitting there looking at us.
It'll come back and back. But if having a public register becomes the international norm, Paul, then we'll do it. The Isle of Man isn't saying... You
just don't want to jump first? Or
why should we disadvantage businesses on the Isle of Man? There's 1,400 jobs in the fiduciary...
What impact could it make?
Well, there was 1,400 jobs that were at stake. You know, it could be argued. Because all that you would do is that people would then displace to Malta, for example, Cyprus, where they don't have public registers. You know, the European Union don't have a public register, they have a private register. That's what we're complying with. If it becomes the international norm, of course we'll move, but then it's us complying with the international law and not disadvantaging the businesses on the Isle of Man.
It could happen. I mean, it's going to happen, isn't it?
It could happen. I'm not saying it 100% it will happen, but it will happen at our pace when we go along with the international standards.
So you could have taken it to court. What court would you have gone to if it had to go there?
Well, the UK government we have to agree to implement the legislation, and we would have refused to have implemented the legislation.
Ooh.
So they would then have...
That would have been very serious.
Well, and it was a constitutional... And I didn't
you
want to
threatened
go
this,
down
did
that...
you?
Yeah, well, you have to stand your ground. You know, yes, we have a good working relationship with all the parties, including the government. And as to be fair to the government, they did not want this. They knew they couldn't do it.
So you went down there and said, we won't do this. If you put that through, we won't implement it.
But equally,
that's a constitutional crisis.
You don't go down banging the table. You explain the situation. You explain. We've already had a review. You threatened
it. I mean, that day you had to say that's
a
line in the sand.
I made it clear that it was a line in the sand. Yeah.
So constitutionally, we could be really in a strange place if that happened.
Well,
because the Queen is still Lord of Man. I mean, I know, but I'm playing a tabletop exercise here.
Well, it didn't happen. Because
but you must have looked at the way it could have played out.
Yeah, you follow. You know, I'm big on following the ripples.
Yeah.
And it could have gone down, and we were prepared to defend it. You want to work with people and reach a balanced, measured approach, and we fulfil all of our international... In fact, we go further than our international...
Did it help that Jersey and Guernsey, like the three of you together, were all saying the same thing?
We all stood our ground on that one, so, yeah.
Not unlike the Radio Caroline days when it was just the Isle of Man, and you wouldn't see that happening again then. I mean, that's obviously it's subject matter by subject matter. But
you never know what's around the corner. No. But I think if you explain the situation to MPs, and you know, we had a massive meetings. You know, Monday I was in Portcullis House and House of Commons. You know, all day, meeting after meeting after meeting, getting the situation. But that's what...
Were you worried? I mean, like, really worried that it was potentially this could happen?
Yeah, it was obviously a concern, but there's lots of worries you have to deal with. This had already happened the previous year with another bill, and we managed to block it, and, you know, it was never made public.
Is there more education required then, that you don't have control over the Isle of Man and the Channel Islands? The Crown Dependencies are not yours to tinker with.
To open-minded people.
Banging it.
Yes, Paul, it's education, but equally, if you're trying to give a government a bloody nose, that's a minority government that relies on another party to support it. You know, there's no votes from the Isle of Man for some of these MPs in Westminster. They will do what they think is right for their party, and you know, it's having the personal relationship to be able to go and see them and explain the situation. That's why regularly going to Westminster is absolutely key. Yeah, but coming up with a statement, which is what some of the overseas territories did, that we're not happy with this, what's that going to get you? You've got to be able to pick up the phone, know the person at the other side and say, look, I need to come and see you and have a really difficult conversation with you about something. Having those relationships is how you avert this sort of thing. Not all the time, but it helps.
I mean, the thing comes up constantly. Joe blogs on the street, and I don't understand it all, about the City of London uses the Isle of Man, uses the Channel Islands as this conduit for streaming money, which is quite beneficial to the UK.
We upstream a significant amount of money, but it's not... The Isle of Man also helps... There's a cluster in the northwest with the aviation sector. You know, we've got our manufacturing business on the Isle of Man, and there are factories in the UK which would not be there if it wasn't for the Isle of Man. So we help the northwest as well. So it's not just the liquidity from the Crown Dependencies into the City of London. From the Isle of, the other CDs don't have manufacturing, but the Isle of Man does, and we work closely with the northwest.
And just to finish with, basically, you've got people here who are looking through legislation in the UK all the time, aren't you? Just looking out for these. Yeah, well, we also slip them in.
Yeah, we've got Lansons who are on retention as our PR people, and they check that sort of thing too. But yeah, our external relations team on this floor regularly checking what's happening in Westminster, listening to debates, and if someone says anything about the Isle of Man, they get a letter from me, good or bad, within 24 hours. Okay. Correcting them and inviting them over. That's often what you get people over to the Isle of Man, show them how it really is, and they'll come back with a totally different impression. Whereas they just, with the bad PR we had in the the 80s, 90s, early noughties, that's what's in their mind. But when you get them over here, so I always invite people, if they stand up in Westminster and have a pop at the island, and maybe they don't fully understand the situation, they always get a letter inviting them over.
They're on Tynwald Hill before you know it.
Well, not always, but you
that's
try.
Your moment to
Well, I go down to Portcullis House and meet with them.
Yeah, but I mean, Tynwald Day, don't you bring them over for that pomp and circumstance?
Well, you also bring over those that have been really supportive of the Isle of Man to thank them for, supporting the Isle of Man behind the scenes.
So just keep watching the spaces. I mean, we're sort of an Amber Alert scenario.
Well, it's been like this for a while. But, you've got the same with, you've got beneficial ownership, the EU Code of Conduct Group, Moneyval, and then Brexit all makes a happy day in the office.